Wow, I just tried to get this done and it stopped recording. So, take two. I'm on my way to an event, but I thought I'd quickly get this out. And basically, just a little Just Be Nice tidbit to help people understand why people do a poor job of helping those in need and understanding the needs of people who are experiencing disadvantage, and why we can get these false positives that we understand what's going on based on a bunch of stuff that I see all the time happening when I'm out there talking to people. And one really, really obvious thing that I see constantly is the focus on people saying what they did, what I did to get to point X. And so they give advice like that, saying, I did this, it works for me, you should do this, it should work for you because it works. This is the thing that works, I know from experience. And I guess the classic example is the person I meet that is maybe working at let's say one of the big four professional services firms, or they work in a bank or something like that, and they've done reasonably well financially and they're in a high position. And they'll say, I'll have another kid who needs some guidance, or is struggling, or young adult who's not really making forward movement like we would hope they would, and they're maybe unemployed or whatever it is. And the person who's doing okay will say like, well, what needs to happen for kids' development is they need to study, they need to go to school and do a good job, get a good education, study hard, go to tertiary education, study hard there, go to work hard, put their neck out, ask for opportunities, look for opportunities, chase those down, continue to work hard, work their way up, and eventually, if they keep doing a good job and keep getting better, they get to be, like me, a managing director, a partner, a senior associate, whatever it is. And that's the advice that I'm going to give the person in front of me. And I go, okay, that's great, and that is your experience, but that's what you did right here. It's what you have done. What I look at and what I've been looking at for 15 years is what was around you that allowed that to happen. And when I speak to these people, a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, you can go, well, you were born to, say, a lawyer for a mother and an accountant for a dad, in a literate household, and you had books and things around you when you were a kid, and they sent you to, say, Carey Grammar from prep to 12, and you had this fantastic education, this fantastic independent education. You went to university with people from the same school or the same, APS sporting league, so you were playing against the other people there. They look like you, they sound like you, they have similar experiences to you. You had work experience at friends of your parents, sort of firms or in their industries. You knew what an accountant was when you were 5, and you knew what a lawyer was when you were 5, and you had all this support around that, and lots of different informal learnings in that space, understanding what they do, why they do it, and what the opportunities are in that space. You go to work, and when you're putting your neck out or asking for opportunities or reaching out to people, a lot of the time you're reaching out to people with similar backgrounds. They sound the same, they look the same, they went to similar schools, they have similar understandings, obviously their education levels are similar. And so it's like much less, it's not as intimidating as it could be for someone else. When I pull out the example of this other kid over here, and didn't have literate parents and didn't see a book till they were 5 at school, so behind the 8 ball, didn't have breakfast in the morning, so they weren't really paying attention because they couldn't. They start acting up, because as you do, kids act up, then they sort of get tagged as a bit of a misbehaving kid, and then they sort of lean into that, and it's not the teacher's fault necessarily, it's not, this is just a circumstance. They go through school that way, not really getting the full benefit of it, even though they're in the building and all that kind of stuff, for all of these reasons. And then they don't find out what an accountant is until they're 20. Well, it's really hard to aspire to be something you don't know exists, and if you know it exists but don't really understand what they do, it's very difficult. And if you know it exists and you know what they do, but you don't have the basic skills to lean into an opportunity if it's presented to you, then that's a redundant opportunity. It's not actually an opportunity. For an opportunity to really exist, you have to understand what it is, you have to have the material resources to lean into it, you have to be capable of doing it, and simply saying, oh, it's here if you want it, isn't really good enough. It's not really paying attention to this stuff. The first guy, he definitely works hard. He worked hard, he does long hours, he's definitely putting his neck out, he's clever, he knows his job, but he was a beneficiary of all this stuff around him. And this other kid might be equally clever and hardworking, but didn't have that stuff around them. So because of that, there are these huge gaps. And so we can't just give them advice saying, do what I did. Personally, for me, I could say something like, oh, train hard at footy, lean into it, be noisy and all that kind of stuff. And good stuff can happen off the back of being good at playing footy, and you get lots of experience and all these kinds of wonderful things. But the reason that I got to do it was, I grew up pretty big lit when I was young, which is a benefit in a contact sport, nothing to do with me. The football club was nice and close, which was great because I could walk there. And if it was 20 streets further away, I wouldn't have been able to walk there. Mum wouldn't have been able to drive me. She was doing other stuff. That's why I was walking in the first place. And so just because it was close enough and I could do it, I got to do that opportunity. Now, if it had been further away and I couldn't go, it wouldn't have meant I was going to be a worse footballer. It would have meant I wouldn't have enjoyed it. Wouldn't have meant I wouldn't have leaned into it or tried hard. But I just didn't have that chance. It wasn't there. It wasn't around me. So at JBN, it's so important that we don't just focus on what you did, what they do, but what's around people that is providing them the opportunities and the material support and the understanding that they can lean into these things over time. And that's really, really important. And it's a challenge that comes up often when people want to share their story and what they do, because our story is always just this kind of edited version of what happened, and we cherry pick things and we bring out bits that we think will, connect or pull the heartstrings or whatever. And a lot of the times we're leaving out this understanding around here, or we're just touching on it in a really superficial way, like, oh yeah, thanks to my friend, I got through this. So I had a mental health issue and I was feeling down, I had anxiety, I wasn't okay, and my mum showed up and that was all right. But what we're missing out is like, I could borrow $50 of petrol, my workplace was really understanding, or it wasn't, but fortunately I'd already been educated well enough to find another workplace really quickly. I had some savings because I'd had a good job. My health was pretty good. My health was pretty good because I've been well nourished as a kid, and I developed well, and I understand all that stuff, which I'd learned without even realizing. And all of these things conspired to help me get through this tough time. And it wasn't just me. It's never just you. It is never just one person. So if we can spend more time focusing on how to build this out and make this more equal and more well-resourced for people and let them lean into it, and less time telling the most vulnerable people to do what we did or what we've seen other people do without supporting them around them as well, if we can do more support around people, we'll give better help. If we can improve the environments around people, equality of opportunity will improve, outcomes will improve, people will lean into them. It's a lie that people don't lean into these, because everywhere you look, well-resourced people lean into these things and they lead richer, happier, fuller lives, and they're healthier and all these kinds of things. Doesn't mean that they don't have challenges. Everyone's got challenges, but we've got to stop reducing all the challenges to just what happens to us and how we dealt with it, and start looking also at like, well, how did we get through it? How did these transpire? And what do we need to make sure that the chances of these happening are less around people, and the chances of people succeeding are more, because we've just stacked the books in their favour around them. And I keep doing this, and you can just deal with it. But it's really important, and I think that is a conversation we don't have enough of, because it's a complicated conversation. It requires you to pay a lot of attention to things that people typically don't. It takes the onus off people saying what they did all the time and puts it on ensuring the environments around people have the support and the material, things that they need to actually take up those opportunities. And the better we do understanding that and delivering that to communities and people, the better off we'll all be. The more we'll understand disadvantage each other, and that's the only way really to move the needle in an effective way. But it is a difficult, sophisticated conversation sometimes, and it starts with not just paying attention to what you're doing, but paying attention to how you're able to do what you're doing and what conspired and helped you do that. And that's really, really important. Definitely keep paying attention to what you're doing, definitely keep being the best you can be and looking out for ways to help each other, but let's also look at why we know about it and build that out. It's super important. Video cut out, add this last little bit in, boom, that's what's happening, deal with it. Thanks for listening, look after each other, and just be nice.